The cold water rushed over my face as I struggled to breathe. My weak legs kicked, but they couldn't lift me because they had never worked like everyone else. I heard shouts from the riverbank, voices of people I once trusted, voices that should have protected me. Just let her go. She will only bring shame. She is useless, no future. Their shadows moved away as the river pulled me deeper. I wanted to scream, but the water swallowed my voice. I wanted to fight, but my small, disabled body had no strength left. All I could think was, so this is how they end my story? Because I'm different? Because I can't walk like them? But then, something happened. Just when the river rolled me under, just when everything turned dark, I felt a strange force, a warm spark inside me. My fingers moved on their own, my arms cut through the water like they had learned a secret dance. The river began to push me upward, almost like it feared me. But before I could understand what was happening, before I could catch my breath, I saw something rise from the depth of the river, something that would change my life forever. And that is where everything began. My name is Grace, and before I became the legend people whisper about today, I was just a little girl with crooked legs and a dream too bright for the small world I was born into. My story did not start with greatness. It started with pain. I grew up in a village where children like me were seen as burdens. People believed disability was a curse, a sign that a child would never bring anything good. They looked at me like I was a mistake, like I was a question nobody wanted to answer. My mother tried her best. Her name was Helen, and she was gentle like early morning sunshine. She would carry me on her back every day, even when her own bones were tired. She tied cloth around my legs, hoping they would straighten. She massaged them with warm oil. She prayed. She cried. And she loved me even when everyone else turned their backs. But love alone cannot fight the whole world. My father, Henry, was a proud man, too proud. He never forgave God for giving him a child who couldn't walk. He stopped carrying me when I turned 3. He stopped looking at me when I turned 4. And by the time I was 6, he stopped speaking to me completely. Every time he entered the room, he walked past me like I was air. And my father wasn't the only one. Neighbors whispered when my mother carried me outside. Children giggled whenever they saw me dragging myself on the ground with my hands. Some would say, "Why doesn't she just stay inside? She looks scary." Others would say, "She will never become anything." I heard every word, and every word planted a seed inside me. Some seeds grew into sadness, but some grew into strength. There was only one place where I felt alive, near the river. The river was my secret friend. Its sound calmed my heart. When the air blew across the water, it brushed my face like a soft hand. Sometimes I dipped my fingers inside the water and felt like the river understood me. It never judged me. It never laughed at me. It accepted me gently, the way humans should have. But humans can be cruel. One morning, when the sun was barely awake, a group of villagers gathered outside our home. Their murmurs woke me. My mother stepped outside with me on her lap, and I saw faces full of worry, anger, and fear. An old woman with silver hair pointed at me. "This child brings misfortune. Look at what has been happening. No rain, sick animals, this is a sign." My mother shouted, "Grace is not a curse. She is my child." But the old woman shook her head. "Your child is the problem. If she stays, this village will fall." Others joined in, some yelling, some whispering as if afraid of me. My father stood among them. He didn't defend me. He didn't even touch me. He only stared at the ground, like my disability embarrassed him too much to look at me. That was the first time I felt something break inside my chest. Days passed, and the pressure grew. Some villagers stopped greeting my mother. Others refused to buy her goods at the market. A few even threw stones at our door at night. One evening, my father came home with a strange look in his eyes. Cold, empty, like all the love he once had dried up. "Helen," he said, "I can't do this anymore." My mother froze. "Do what?" He pointed at me. "This, her." My heart squeezed so hard it hurt. "She is my daughter," my mother cried. But he turned away. "She is a burden we can't carry." And that was the night everything began to change. Months later, something unexpected happened, something that made my disability seem even heavier. I discovered my talent. It started one silent morning when my mother left me on a mat outside the house. She went to fetch water, and I sat alone watching the wind move the leaves. Without thinking, I picked up a broken piece of wood and tapped it on the ground. The rhythm was soft at first, then stronger, like the beat of a brave heart. Tap, 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 tap. Suddenly, a melody began to flow from my mouth, soft humming at first, then full notes. My voice rose like wings lifting from inside me. A passerby stopped, then another and another. People stood quietly, listening to a girl who couldn't walk but somehow made sounds that floated like magic in the air. "Is that really her?" someone whispered. "She has a voice like heaven," another said. But the same old woman, who once called me a curse spat on the ground. "Even curses can sing," she said coldly. Still, every time I sang, something inside me grew stronger. My voice became my legs, each note carried me to places my body couldn't reach. I didn't know then that this talent would one day lift me higher than anyone's expectations. I didn't know it would turn me from the girl they wanted to throw away into the woman they would later celebrate. But before my rise came my fall. The villagers' fear grew again. They said I was pretending. They said my voice was suspicious. They said maybe spirits lived inside me. And one night, I overheard something I was never meant to hear. My father and a group of men were whispering outside. "We must get rid of her," a man said. My blood turned cold. "How?" another asked. "Take her to the river," my father replied quietly. "No one will question it. The river washes curses away." My breath caught. My own father. My own blood. The man who should have loved me more than anyone. I felt tears burning my eyes, but I didn't make a sound. My mother wasn't there. She had gone to help a neighbor deliver a baby. That was the night they decided my fate. And the morning after, they carried me toward the river. The crowd didn't follow, only the men who hated me the most. They lifted me roughly, ignoring my cries. My father didn't look into my eyes. He stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. When we reached the river, the same one that comforted me for years, they didn't hesitate. A man whispered, "Forgive us," but his voice didn't match his actions. They threw me into the water like I was nothing. The shock was so strong I couldn't breathe. The cold wrapped around me. My legs twisted painfully as I sank. Their voices faded. The sky disappeared. I thought that was the end. But it was. Because something unbelievable happened in the river. Something that would one day make me a legend. And it began with a shape rising from the dark water, coming toward me. What I saw next changed everything. And that is where I will continue in Chapter 2. A new extreme event was already waiting in the water. The water churned around me, icy and wild, but in the darkness I saw a shadow moving toward me. At first I thought it was a trick of my mind, a hallucination brought on by fear. But then I felt it, something solid, strong, and alive brushing against my arms. My heart hammered so fast I thought it would burst. It was a log, but not an ordinary one. Its surface glowed faintly, almost like it was alive. I clutched it with all my strength, and it rolled gently beneath me, keeping me afloat. The current tried to drag me under again, but this strange log seemed to fight it, guiding me toward the riverbank. When I finally stumbled onto the muddy shore, soaked and shivering, I didn't look back. The river had taken me to safety, but it had also given me a warning. The world could be cruel, but the power inside me could fight back. I crawled into the bushes, hiding as I listened to voices in the distance. They were angry, frustrated, unsure what to do next. My father's voice cut through the night, harsh and final. "She's gone. Leave her. If she survives, it's her problem." The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. They had abandoned me. They had left me to die, and yet I was alive. I stayed hidden until the first rays of dawn lit the sky. Every muscle in my body ached. My legs felt useless. My arms burned. My skin was cold and wet. But my mind buzzed with a strange energy. a mixture of fear, anger, and determination. If I could survive the river, maybe I could survive the world too. The village didn't notice I was gone until hours later. When my mother returned, she screamed my name until her voice broke. But the villagers only shook their heads, murmuring about curses and bad luck. My father, however, didn't say a word. He avoided looking at her, avoided looking at me, even though I wasn't there. I realized something important that day. If you are left behind, it is not always because you are weak. Sometimes, it is because the world is testing the strength that already exists inside you. For weeks after the river, I hid in the forest that ran along the edge of our village. I found food from wild berries and river fish, and I built a small shelter with branches. Every day, I practiced singing, my voice carried across the trees, mixing with the whispers of the wind. The forest became my audience, my teacher, and my friend. I discovered something I never expected. The harder life pushed me down, the higher my voice could reach. The river had given me life, but the forest gave me purpose. Each note I sang made my arms stronger, my confidence grow. My disability was still there, my legs still crooked, my body still fragile, but my voice, my talent, became unstoppable. One afternoon, while I practiced a new song I had been composing, I heard voices again. But these were different. Laughter. Curiosity. Not the cruel whispers of villagers, something new. I looked up and saw a small boy watching me from the edge of the trees. His eyes were wide with wonder. You can really sing," he asked, his voice trembling. I nodded cautiously. "I've never heard anything like that," he said, stepping closer. For the first time since the river, I realized my gift could draw people to me. Not because they felt pity, not because they thought I was a curse, but because my talent, my spirit, my courage, it could inspire others. I spent the next few weeks quietly gathering small groups of children from the village who were curious, brave, or just lonely. I taught them songs, rhythms, and dances. I showed them how to express themselves, how to find strength in their own voices. I was becoming more than a survivor. I was becoming a leader. But just when I began to feel safe, just when I thought the river's threat was behind me, a new danger appeared. One evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the forest, I heard the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and coming closer. I froze, listening. My heart sank as the voices became clearer. My father and the men from the village. "They're still alive," one of them said. "We can't let her inspire anyone. She must be punished." Panic surged through me. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't take me fast enough. My arms shook as I searched for something, anything, to defend myself. And then, from the shadows, I heard the unmistakable sound of the river, the same river that had tried to take my life, now roaring in my ears. Before I could move, I felt the earth beneath me shift. The ground trembled, and a massive wave of water surged through the forest, rushing toward the men with unstoppable force. Trees bent and snapped, and the river itself seemed to rise, as if it had remembered me. The men screamed. My father's voice was drowned out by the roar. I could only watch, frozen, as the forest and the river collided in chaos. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying and thrilling at the same time. The river that once almost killed me had returned, but now it was on my side. Something bigger, something dangerous, and something powerful was about to happen, and it would change everything. That was the moment the forest and the river became my allies. But it also marked the beginning of a new, even greater challenge, one that would test my courage, my talent, and the limits of what I thought was possible. I clung to a branch as the water swept past, knowing one thing for certain: my life would never be the same. And then, a figure emerged from the roaring water, looking at me with eyes that held secrets I could barely comprehend. The figure in the water was unlike anything I had ever seen. At first, I thought it was another log or shadow, but as it came closer, I realized it had a shape, tall, strong, and glowing faintly, like the river itself had taken form. Its eyes met mine, and I felt an odd warmth inside, a sense that it knew me, understood me, and wanted to protect me. I wanted to reach out, but my arms trembled with fear. I had survived the river once, but now the river itself seemed alive, bending around me and the mysterious figure, holding back its raging currents as if to give me a chance. The figure spoke, its voice echoing like the rushing water, yet soft as a whisper. "You are not meant to be left behind. Grace, the world will try to drown you, but your voice, your heart will lift you above it all." I wanted to ask questions to understand what was happening, but the figure slowly began to fade as the river settled. A current pulled me gently toward the forest, and I realized I was no longer alone. My body, weak and crooked though it was, felt lighter. The fear in my chest softened, replaced by a strange energy, like the river had given me a gift. From that day, everything changed. I no longer crawled through the forest in fear. I began to explore it fully, learning to navigate with my arms, discovering small animals, and even finding a quiet stream where I could practice my singing. My voice became stronger than ever. The songs I sang seemed to carry not just melody, but power. Birds would come to listen, and sometimes the wind itself seemed to echo my tunes. I became braver. I ventured closer to the village, observing the people who had tried to abandon me. I saw them live their ordinary lives, their problems small and unimportant compared to the battles I had survived. I realized that the river had given me more than life. It had given me perspective. Word of a mysterious singing girl reached the village children. At first, they were too scared to approach, but curiosity won. One by one, children came into the forest, timid and shy, until I had a small circle of young listeners who hung on every note I sang. I taught them the songs and rhythms I created. I told them stories about courage, survival, and believing in themselves even when the world told them they were nothing. Yet not everything was peaceful. My father's anger had not faded. Weeks after my river ordeal, I caught a glimpse of him and the villagers at the edge of the forest, plotting. "She is learning too much," one whispered. "Soon the village will see she is not cursed. We cannot allow it." The words cut through me like a knife. I knew then that my freedom, my talent, and even my life were still in danger. My father still saw me as a problem, and the villagers were still afraid of what I could become. Then came the next challenge. One evening, as I practiced a new song by the river, a group of men stepped silently into the clearing. My heart raced. My father was at their center, his face harder and colder than I remembered. He didn't speak at first. He only watched. "You think your songs can protect you," he sneered. "Your talent means nothing. You are weak. You always were weak." I wanted to run, but I knew my legs couldn't carry me far. I took a deep breath and began to sing. At first, the melody was soft, gentle. Then, as the men came closer, it grew louder, stronger, more commanding. Something unbelievable happened. The river, as if sensing my plea, rose behind me. The water swirled and twirled, forming a wall between me and my father's men. I felt a surge of power, a connection with the river that was more than survival. It was protection. The men stumbled back, terrified. The river didn't attack them, but it pushed them away, keeping me safe. My voice and the river together formed a shield I could not have imagined. My father's jaw tightened. He tried to approach, but the water surged again, and he fell back, drenched and defeated. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. For the first time, he realized that the girl he thought useless could command forces beyond his understanding. I did not celebrate. Instead, I knew something dangerous was still coming. The village had not forgiven me. The forest and river were my allies, but I was still a small, disabled girl facing a world that had already tried to destroy me. And just when I thought I had survived the immediate threat, a shadow fell over the forest. A voice called out, not my father, not any villagers I recognized, but something older, darker, and far more menacing. "Grace," it said, and the forest itself seemed to tremble. "You have awakened powers you do not yet understand, but you are not ready, not yet." The wind howled, the trees bent as if alive, the river swelled, my heart pounded. I knew then that my greatest test was coming, not just against my father or the villagers, but against forces I had only just begun to glimpse. And this test would not be a gentle challenge. It would push me to the very limits of my courage, my talent, and my spirit. I took a deep breath, gripping a branch for support. My voice trembled, but I began to sing, not just for survival, but for the strength I knew I possessed. And from the depths of the forest, the shadow moved closer, bringing with it a danger so extreme that I realized my legend was about to be written in fire, water, and song. The shadow moved closer, twisting through the trees like smoke. I could feel its power even before I saw it clearly, cold, heavy, and full of menace. My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay still. I knew running would not save me, not this time. Grace, the voice called again, low and rumbling. You have survived the river, you have commanded its waters, and yet you are still small. You are still weak. You must choose, submit to fear or rise beyond it. I swallowed hard. My legs shook, but my arms, strengthened by months of surviving in the forest and mastering my voice, held me steady. The river behind me swelled as if waiting, ready to respond. The wind picked up, whipping my hair across my face, and I felt the forest itself leaning toward me, encouraging me. I took a deep breath. I will rise, I shouted, my voice carrying farther than I had ever imagined. I am not weak, I am Grace, and I will not be afraid. The shadow hissed, and the trees groaned. It surged forward, faster than I could move, but the river rose in response. Water shot up like walls on either side, glowing faintly, forming a barrier that kept the shadow at bay. I felt my energy mix with the river's strength. It was as if every hardship I had endured, every fall, every laugh of cruelty, every tear, was now flowing through me like a current of power. The shadow circled, studying me, testing me. Then, with a scream that shook the ground, it lunged. The river crashed against it like a storm. I opened my mouth and sang not a melody, but a command, a force of sound that pushed through the forest, vibrating in the earth beneath me. The shadow staggered, hissing in frustration, and recoiled. And then I saw it clearly for the first time. It wasn't just a shadow, it was fear, anger, and doubt made visible. It was every insult I had ever heard, every sneer from the villagers, every cold glance from my father, every time I had felt abandoned. And now it had a body and a voice trying to swallow me whole. I realized something important. This was my final test. I could fight it with my arms, or my legs, or even the river. But the only real power I had was my voice, my heart, and my courage. I closed my eyes and remembered the river the first time it saved me. I remembered the forest that became my sanctuary. I remembered every child who had listened to my songs, every bird, every creature who had shared in my courage. And then I let it all flow into one long, rising note, a note filled with pain, hope, and determination. The sound hit the shadow like a hammer. It screamed, faltered, and twisted, trying to escape. But my voice would not let it go. Every note carried my strength, my survival, my refusal to be abandoned. The river surged, and the shadow began to shrink, shrinking until it vanished completely, leaving only the calm forest and the sparkling river behind. I collapsed to the ground, trembling and exhausted. My arms ached. My throat burned. My heart raced so hard I thought it would burst. But I had done it. I had faced fear itself and survived. When I looked up, the forest seemed brighter, the river calmer, and for the first time, I saw my reflection in the water. Not just a disabled girl, not just someone who had been abandoned, but someone strong, someone capable, someone who could rise above every expectation. The lesson was clear. The world might try to throw you into rivers, cast you aside, or leave you to face impossible challenges, but the strength within you, your courage, your heart, your talent, can lift you higher than anyone ever imagined. Even my father, standing at the edge of the forest, looked at me with disbelief. He no longer saw the weak child he had tried to abandon. He saw someone unstoppable, someone the world would have to respect. But my journey was not over. I had survived the river. I had faced the shadow. I had become stronger. Yet beyond the forest, beyond the village, there were still challenges that no one could predict. My voice, my talent, and my heart would be tested again, in ways that would demand more than courage, they would demand legend. I stood, trembling but unbroken, and looked toward the horizon. I knew my story was just beginning. And somewhere deep inside, I heard the river whisper, "You are Grace. You are more than they could ever imagine. Now rise." Years passed, And the girl who had once been thrown into the river became the woman everyone whispered about with awe, Grace, the girl who survived the impossible. Her voice, once fragile and soft, now carried power and beauty that could move hearts, calm storms, and inspire generations. The village that had tried to abandon her could no longer ignore her. Children she had taught grew into brave young people, spreading her songs and lessons far beyond the forest. Adults who had mocked her, ignored her, or doubted her talent now bowed their heads in respect, some even with tears in their eyes. Even her father, who had once tried to cast her away, came to understand the depth of her strength. Grace never sought revenge. She understood that the cruelty of others had been part of the river, part of the forest, part of the test that shaped her. Instead, she used her gifts to heal, to teach, and to uplift. Her disability, once seen as a weakness, had given her a perspective others could never understand, a vision of courage, patience, and relentless determination. Her talent had lifted her higher than anyone had imagined. She traveled far, her songs reaching people who had never heard hope before. She became a legend not because of the hardships she endured alone, but because she had turned every obstacle, the river, the fear, the abandonment, into a force that lifted others along with her. And yet, Grace remained humble. She would often sit by the same river that had once tried to take her life and sing quietly, letting the water carry her gratitude, her memories, and her promise to those still struggling. You are never too broken to rise. You are never too small to be mighty. And the world may try to drown you, but the strength inside you can make you a legend. Her story became more than survival. It became a testament to the power of spirit, the courage to rise above fear, and the truth that even in the darkest currents, hope and talent can lift you higher than anyone expects. Grace smiled as the river sparkled in the sunlight, feeling the warmth of a life she had fought for, a life she had claimed for herself. She had become the living proof that abandonment, fear, and disability were never the end. They were the beginning of a legend. And so, the girl who had once been thrown into the river became immortal in stories, in songs, and in hearts, a legend who showed the world that strength comes not from the body, but from the courage to rise again and again. The story of Grace ends not with sorrow, but with triumph, a full circle from abandonment to legend, from fear to inspiration, and from weakness to the unstoppable power of talent and heart. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to this channel for more videos.